Hi, everyone. Welcome back to this week's episode of the PETHS Alumni Network podcast. I'm your host, Nathan, and today we are joined by Mr. Caleb Wei. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right.
Nice to hear. Looking at your shirt representing UBC, we'll introduce you really quickly. You graduated from PET in 2019. You then went on to study at Western University, where you studied music education with a focus on, instrumental. That was your focus, and then we'll touch on that a bit later. You're now at UBC, like I mentioned, at Teachers College, and you're hoping to become a high school teacher in the future. I hope I got that all right, and we'll start by jumping right into it. Offline, we were talking about some of your best memories. You said you enjoyed music class and music council. Can you let us know, like more specifically, what were some key moments that stood out for you?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was a while ago.
Yeah.
5 years feels like forever ago. But yeah, I think I really just felt sort of an attachment to band. I picked up
Yeah.
Iron in grade 6, and I think going forward, I'm just like, yeah, this is a cool thing. And though, even though it started, I was like, oh yeah, I can do this. I can get 100. It's
Mm.
music is an easy thing. I think over the years, I think I eventually started to be like, okay, this is actually more than just playing. This is actually fun. We're creating this sort of like band family, and it's kind of because like pretty much all stuck from grade 9 through grade 12 was pretty much the exact same crew of people, which is actually not very frequent in other band programs. We can touch on
Mhm.
that later. Uh, but yeah, the fact that we were able to stay together as a band and really develop sort of a connection, even if only temporary, it was very nice. And I think kind of family-esque vibe was
Mhm.
very
Yeah. So like obviously, there's an emotional part to it. I don't have a musical background, but I know, it obviously elicits a lot of emotions. There's like, writing songs, playing songs, that family part aspect. What did music really mean to you outside of that family aspect?
right. Music. Well, aside from it being like one of the only things I can actually do, uh, I think for music, what music means to me personally is very much it's a method of expression, so to speak. I know it's a cliche phrase, but really being able to express yourself in the way you play, the way you compose, the way you write lyrics. That's also all these little, honestly, kind of underexplored areas of music because I think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get ARCT 10 piano or violin or all those instruments, and it's like you're good at music, but do you really understand what music is? And I think that's the big separator between a lot of people, this
Mhm.
generation, past generations,
Right.
all that. Yeah.
So that does beg the question, what is music? Like how would you define it for yourself?
Yeah, I think music is an art form, and I think it is very much up to the interpreter, the creator, to shape it in a way that shows who they are. Because I think there's one thing, if this is a common thing used by many a music teacher. You can play what's on the page, but that's playing music how someone that's playing the music that someone else wrote, but that's not necessarily your your interpretation, your way of playing it. I think there's a real difference and a real power in taking a piece of music, not changing what's on there, but instead putting your own spin on it or putting your own interpretations, putting a little more emphasis on this section or, playing a little bit interpretation really.
Mhm. Yeah. So on the flip side, you mentioned creation. Do you write your own music?
I've dabbled. It's stuff's been in the works. I wrote a really, really crappy song in the past. I mean, for a first time, probably wasn't that bad, but I definitely would like to venture
Mhm.
eventually, when I have more time, potentially on the side,
Yeah.
into more songwriting ventures, because I think it's very unexplored. It's very kind of under the radar kind of thing when it comes to music.
Mhm. Do you have inspiration that you're looking to take from, or a mix of people?
Inspiration is probably less so like people, specific things and more genres. I think I'm much more Japanese city pop, much more on the low, kind of jazzy, groovy kind of music, as opposed to the no roasting, but as opposed to the fat industry produced
Yeah.
music pop music you hear on the radio nowadays.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm actually interested to hear about that. I know, it's a big thing, with TikTok and, radio stations and all the things like that. How would you, as yourself, who we could say is a purist, a music enthusiast, well, how would you kind of say like the music industry is heading, and what don't you like about, current music trends?
Geez. This could easily be a 2-hour topic on its own. Uh, so industrializing music is a very it's rough because at its core, music is meant to be like I said before, expression and expression of self. But the moment you put money in the mix, and you're doing this for a living, this is your job, that's when personal expression starts to die a little bit, and then you start catering to what society wants. You have like when I say industrialized, I don't mean the songs are all bad. It's just the songs all sound the same because the industry wants one specific type of sound. And to its credit, it does change over the years. We see people like Sam Smith throw back with some retro sounds. We've seen more groovy stuff happen, but then now there's always these trends that come and go. And when all the songs from one certain era start to sound a certain way, that's when it kind of starts to go down a bad trend.
Mhm.
Which, funnily enough, I'm going on like a terrible tangent here. Uh, it's actually not that common in other areas of the world. For example, I'm gonna be stereotypical here. Uh, Places like Japan, China, Korea, they all have their own. They do, and I'm not gonna be biased, but they do. They also have their genres. They also have their specific types of genres they go through. But it's also in general more varied because they have multiple genres they kind of flip flop back in between, and it's just not necessarily as frequent in the Western market because let's say the Western market I would say is very much oversaturated. Meanwhile, in the East, we see, for instance, K-pop groups. Sometimes they only have like 2 or 3 comebacks a year, 2 or 3 new songs a year, and that's just not really the case with the Western because you have new songs coming. Like there's a revolving door, and I'll cut myself up here because
Yeah.
I was here for a long time. But yeah, there's a lot of intricacies in examining music, especially from
Mhm.
different genres.
Have you ever seen, I remember this one video, it's called The Four Chords of Awesomeness or something.
Oh yeah,
The four
Axis of
chords.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's the
sorry, the
song.
axis of awesomeness. Yeah, so I do realize that, like it's really hard to make new sounds. I don't know if that's what the video was really trying to portray, but like basically for those who haven't watched it, it's you can play a lot of pop songs with just four chords, right? And there's a lot of good songs in there that people really recognize. You've watched that video, right?
Oh, hundreds, thousands of times, hundreds of times.
Yeah, so for someone who doesn't know, like someone like me, I kind of interpret that as, it's really hard to go outside the box that much. A lot of what's been out there is based on the same thing. Is that a fair interpretation of it?
I would say that song, it's, I mean, to preface it even more, it's made by a comedy group.
Mhm.
It wasn't necessarily to make a statement or anything. I do think it does cherry pick at,
Mhm.
some very specific songs. And even in their updated versions, it's like there's only a few songs you can really add on to there. I think four chords is essentially saying, yeah, there's a lot of industry standards that, kind of take the same thing and just kind of beat it into the ground like a dead horse. But at the same time, sorry, the songs themselves, even though they share the same chords, they can have different, feels to them, different
Mhm.
instrumentations to it. And there's a reason they're all popular, right? It's not because they all blend into each other. If they were all kind of the same type of song, then we would say, yeah, oh, they're just. This is a very good statement on how all these songs are the same. But no, they're all different songs. They just happen to share the same chord pattern, I would say. But they're all successful
Mhm.
songs in
Yes, I remember watching that like as a kid, and I was like, obviously I don't have a musical background, but it kind of like opened my eyes a little bit. And like you said, it might be a little bit biased that they, cherry pick very specific songs to fit their thing. But yeah, if you haven't watched that, watch that video. So we'll swivel a little bit more. We kind of got off track a little bit about, we talked about your high school, you felt like a family in band. And you said you picked up music very early on as a kid, specifically the clarinet. And now you're in a teacher's program. So kind of tell me about when you kind of realized that there was this intersection of teaching and music that you really wanted to pursue.
Right. Well, after I realized law wasn't a viable option, no. No, I mean, to be fair, that is very much an accurate way of how things went. I think going through, again, this is another topic I could talk about for hours, but I think there's a very specific set of jobs that you are expected to go into and that are, financially sustainable. Music is not one of them. So even though I kind of took that all the way through high school and I really loved it, I never really thought of it as a viable career option. And so the thought of being a music teacher didn't really occur to me until I think I kid you not, like end of grade 11, start of grade 12.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When the university stuff is like, it's on the horizon. Yeah, I think looking back, I think potentially I could have done a bit on like performance. I may have shotgunned the education route a little bit too fast. 'Cause I think because musicians we all have this sort of like, oh, we're not good enough for anything. We're all trash. We're all like we never recognize our own talents. So I think if I put in the work, I probably could have potentially gone down, you know, performance, composition, another route. I think education was the first one of like, okay, I'm good at music, I might as well teach it, that kind of not good enough
Yeah.
to play, but good enough to teach. That kind of
Yeah. So you went to Western first and then UBC. I'm kind of curious as to, what were your choices at that point? What were some of the big deciding factors that led you to those places? How was your undergrad experience different from your current, post undergrad experience? If you kind of tell us about that.
right. So the process. Oh, that was fun. It's a lot different from other processes.
Mm-hmm.
For other people, the hard work starts and ends in high school. You have, well, not necessarily ends because
Yeah.
same music stuff, but you're working through. You have to get good marks in grade 9, good marks in grade 10, so you can take your courses, get all the calcs, the sciences, the maths, all you need. For music, a lot of it is actually not terrible. Well, I say not terrible, but it can be nerve-wracking for some people.
Yeah.
But a lot of the focus is actually placed on the audition and the interview. And for some universities, the portfolio. Not sure. I don't think any of the ones I applied to had a portfolio, which is fine because
Yeah.
portfolios. But yeah, so applying is very much you go on, you do the audition, and you get like one shot at it. So you better know your stuff. And thankfully I did. But I know a lot of people who don't.
Yeah.
And that's not to say they're bad players. It's just in the heat of the moment, sometimes you screw up one too many times and just things just fall apart, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I applied to 5 well, 4 because I skimped out on U of T. Because U of T had a longer process. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I applied to 4 universities: Western, York, Queens, and one more that I'm forgetting. And Western was my top choice because obviously that was the one everyone recommended. Like, if you want to do music education, Western's your place. Got into Western, and thankfully, my decision to go to UBC was partially influenced by the fact that I need to get out of Ontario because of my entire life, and it's nice to see the world,
And that's not to say that Western's a bad school.
It's not. No, it's for sure. I think its teachers college program is really great. I just need personally for my needs, I needed to get out of Ontario.
What does the audition piece look like? Do they just give you a piece of music sight unseen and you have to play it, or like how does that really
That's
work?
one of the parts.
Yeah.
Usually they prepare you prepare your best piece of music, your best solo piece of music to play at the audition. Usually it's 1 or 2. Sometimes they'll have a sight reading component where they just give you a piece and you have like a minute to read it down and you just play it through.
Yeah.
Sometimes they have like a sight singing part where you actually have to sing. That sucks, but it's part of music. And then after that, it's just like a quick 5 to 10 minute interview. Like, why do you want to be a teacher, or why do you why'd you come for music? What's your background? Who is your private teachers? I say
Mhm.
interview, but it's really not too bad. It's
Oh,
like it's a few questions which classifies as an interview, but most of
right.
it is very straightforward. What are some of the things you've done in your life?
Right. So, before you mentioned, obviously everyone wants to get to like level 10 in piano. Does that kind of like play into your interview? Like, do they know, your background? And as soon as they see like a level 10, they're kind of like, okay, like this person obviously knows what he's doing.
The age-old fallacy of
Yeah.
higher number means better musician.
Yeah.
So I would say it helps. I would say if you have your certificates, it definitely helps. And say, okay, this person probably knows what they're doing, but I think a lot of what you can gauge is through the audition process itself. And I think to get into the music program, it's not necessarily as strict, but you do have to re-audition for a performance degree. And I think there is when they take into effect then, okay, is this person did this person get the certificate because they know how to move their fingers fast, or are
Yeah.
they there because they actually know how to perform and
Mhm.
interpret music in their own way, in a way that is not necessarily unique, but their own style.
Mhm. Yeah. So, obviously when you go down the performance route, it's a lot more application based, I'm assuming, and, obviously based on performance. And then in the education side, is it a lot more like theory based?
It's actually, funnily enough, not necessarily music theory, but I think teaching
Mhm.
theory is the way to
Mhm.
put it, because you don't go through all the rigorous performing, because in performance you have to do like chamber things, just small groups. You have to do solo recitals. You have to do all those performance things. In education, it's much more rounded. You can take theory courses. I didn't. I hate theory.
Mhm.
Not a
Yeah.
not an unpopular opinion. But you do conducting courses. You do education theory courses. You do a bunch of things that are related to education itself.
Mhm. And then I'm curious about, the audition and performance as well. Does admissions really care, how many instruments you play, or is it more so like the quality of, your one best instrument? Are you allowed to show off the fact that you play, multiple instruments?
Quality over quantity.
Hmm.
Quality over quantity. They care about
Yeah.
your main instrument and only your main instrument.
Hmm. Did a lot of the people, alongside yourself play, multiple instruments, and did you play multiple instruments?
Um, I didn't. I mean, I played piano
Yeah.
for a bit, but that doesn't really count.
Mm.
In the music education world,
Yeah.
there are actually a few people, quite a few people actually who double, but usually on similar instruments. You know, your clarinet and
Hmm.
your saxophone. The saxophones, you have your alto sax, tenor sax.
Hmm.
So there is a bit of overlap. There are some people that are absolute freaks and can play every
Yeah.
instrument like perfectly, and I'm like,
Hmm.
how? Uh,
Yeah.
but I would say it's not uncommon to be a multi-instrumentalist. I would even say it's probably better if you are, which I'm not. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's basically it. It's good. It's not a requirement though.
Mhm. And then, moving forward, when you decided to go to UBC, you said you want to get out of the province. Were there other schools that were under consideration for you?
No,
No.
no, frankly no. I think I was I was business pitched to UBC, so to speak, in my second, third, or fourth year. It's a
Mhm.
blur at this point. And then I'm like, you know what? That sounds great. And because I have guaranteed admission if I choose to go to Western, because that's one of the benefits. If you stick with them, you get a guaranteed spot. Um, but then you know what? I'm gonna shoot my shot for UBC. If I don't get it, I'm gonna stay at Western. So I shot my shot and I
Mhm.
got UBC.
I will admit that the UBC campus is a million times nicer than Western's
Oh,
campus
it's
by a long
fantastic.
shot.
Oh, it's so nice out there.
Yeah. And then, one thing I do know is that UBC kids, they call them the solder snakes. That's like a huge thing there
Do
that I
they?
hear.
Actually never
I
heard
heard I
that.
heard that I heard that the solder kids are all solder snakes. That's
Interesting.
yeah, that's word around town. That's what they say. So
Uh,
then, how long is, your undergrad was 4 years, was it? And
yeah,
then
4 years.
is it 2 years for teachers college?
UBC is actually one of the reasons I went to UBC. They have an 11-month program,
Oh,
so
11
it's
months.
yeah. So I don't finish in a month, which sucks because everyone else
Hmm.
does. But I do get my degree faster because I go all the way through to July, and then basically I'm a certified teacher.
Oh, nice. So that honestly, I feel like, being out there for 2 years, wouldn't be a bad thing. It's really
Wouldn't.
nice out there. Yeah, no.
It wouldn't if the rent wasn't just
Oh,
awful.
oh yeah. Yeah, okay, fair. Fair,
Yeah.
yeah. We talked a little bit off camera. You were saying that you want to go into high school teaching, but at the moment there's kind of, a surplus, if you will, for high school teachers. And you said that you might, stay out there for a year. Is that like how much have you thought into, what lies ahead for you?
So it's not actually a surplus.
Okay.
It's actually more of it's a seniority thing. So they don't
Right.
necessarily put you in high schools right away. Most of the time you'll get stuck with an elementary job
Hmm.
because most high school teachers are also locked into contracts and seniority, and you can only
Right.
get a spot if they choose to go.
Right.
Because the more
Okay.
seniority you have, the more power you have. Um,
Hmm.
sorry, what was the original question? Got
Like,
locked on.
how much have you, thought into, staying out in BC? Have you really looked into, what their education system looks like out there?
Right. I think, quite frankly, the way UBC gave it to me was like, if you stay in BC, you will probably find a job. You will probably find a full-time contract. No need to supply teach or anything. Um, and so that's also a pretty good sell. Still
Hmm.
pondering it, obviously, but I think, I mean, by the time this comes out, I might not be pondering. I might already be locked in. So
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think it's weird because there's a lot of avenues you can actually kind of go with this. I think you can. There are people who jump right out of teaching and go to like a foreign country and teach English because you can do that. Because when you get the education degree, you can technically just go and teach English. Because
Hmm.
guess what? You speak English, you can teach
Yeah.
English. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of avenues, and I think BC is only one. Obviously, if you get your degree in a certain university, you probably want to stay in that kind of province or country.
Hmm.
But there are plenty of opportunities, and I think I've only recently started to kind of branch out. Think, there's more than just staying in BC.
Hmm.
Ideally, of course, would like to go back to Ontario for a bit, settle down, but we'll see where the wind takes you. And
Hmm.
most of the cases, you kind of do it the wait for what they tell you to do in the education program.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you're only out there for 11 months program. When it's all said and done, do you think you're gonna identify with UBC or are you gonna represent Western all the way?
I do have this shirt, which is it's
Yeah.
already pretty. It's already a point for
Yeah.
UBC. I
Hmm.
don't know. I think I guess that also begs the question: do I want to represent a university? Do I want to represent myself? You know,
Oh, okay. Do
I think
tell. Yeah.
I think a lot of music teachers nowadays. Yeah, I don't know if Mr. Colley's. I imagine Mr. Colley's still around. Uh, but yeah, there are teachers who aren't necessarily known for the university they come from, but because of their
Hmm.
own teaching style that they've developed over the years and how they've been able to shape a school's music program in their image. Like I know Mr. Colley is wonderful, wonderful teacher.
Hmm.
Um, and his music program is kind of, it's rigorous, but it gets the job done. And there's a lot of music teachers similar like that. And there's other teachers like, you know, they will have these massive programs. They keep wrangling in kids, and there's this kind of reputations you build within, like good reputations you build within the music sphere itself. I think that's more important than kind of representing a university.
Hmm.
I think universities, they're so big and they're so like, oh,
Yeah.
you went to this university, but how much
Yeah.
did you actually take from it,
Right. Yeah.
representing yourself is probably the best way.
I love that answer. Yeah. So if you could like pitch, UBC or Western to someone who's, kind of interested in following this path, how would you tell them the benefits of going down this path?
For music education, I think I'm actually gonna widen the scope a little bit and talk about music in general as opposed to just music education.
Yeah.
I think we no longer live in an era where you have to go after something super academic like math or science or whatever the case. There are plenty of opportunities in the arts or stuff like PE. Like you had some PE
Mhm.
people on the podcast before.
Mhm.
It's like there's so many opportunities that aren't what our parents and what our ancestors pursued.
Mhm.
And I think I think it's much more worthwhile. Again, this is going to be a cliche because I'm a walking cliche machine. I think instead, I think you should do what you want to do and what you love to do. And I think,
Mhm.
if that is something like stats, business, math, accounting, medicine, by all means, go for it. But if in your heart of hearts you really want to do something artistic, you really want to pursue an artistic career, I'd say take the shot, do your research, be like, these are the benefits, these are the jobs I can get,
Mhm.
this just the income you can get, because you can be a sustainable, you can sustain yourself with an artistic field.
Mhm.
It might take a little more work, but you can do it, and if you love to do it,
Mhm.
all power to you. But yeah,
Mhm.
I think, yeah, do your research, come up with an action plan, and stick to it, because I think
Mhm.
a lot of people will give into the pressure of like,
Yeah.
oh, this is such a bad career option for you. But I think if you really want to do it, I would say go for it.
Yeah. No, I really love that advice. Looking back to a similar time frame, by the time you left Pet, through your undergrad up until now, what have been some of your biggest like areas of growth that you've seen?
One would be the fact that I talk a lot more. 5 year 5 years ago, I would not be this talkative, or at least not on a public platform like this.
Mhm.
Or even want to be a teacher. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
it's it's crazy, the kind of dichotomy of being an introvert but also being a teacher, because I think that kind of it lends itself to some weird contradictions there, but
Mhm.
I think it all turned out for the good.
Mhm.
But some other things that have been a learning point. I mean, the elephant in the room, obviously, in COVID happened, and
Mhm.
music and COVID are not. If you think it's hard to learn, stuff like math
Yeah.
and science virtually,
Yeah.
you can't learn music online. It's quite literally impossible. I
Mhm.
was fortunate that Western actually was one of the few ones to actually hold socially distanced, like very socially distanced
Mhm.
band
Yeah.
rehearsals and concerts.
Mhm.
And actually, I can actually link a few because it was a wild time. But
Mhm.
I think COVID really kind of shifted that perspective of, on left, COVID actually worked against us, because they're like, music doesn't have a place in this world if the world shuts down. But then people started to venture out into other opportunities in music, like music production, music composition,
Mhm.
a little bit more music theory, even though I hate it, music history. Uh, and there's so much more to, I think it kind of exposed more that there's more to music than just playing in a concert hall.
Yeah.
While that's what most people see as music, what music is, again, there's a lot more ways you can go down that path.
Mhm.
Seeing that kind of growth and opening, because I'm very classically trained, and having COVID and seeing all these branches kind of open up, kind of widened the kind of like the meme of the brain expanding. But
Mhm.
it's like it kind of opened up like there's actually a lot more to music than just teaching in a school,
Mhm.
and or playing with an orchestra. I think, yeah, that kind of the gradual shift in the perspective of music as music's place in the society, I think, was the biggest thing.
You talked about, a little bit of your career, staying out in UBC and then hopefully coming back to Ontario. We talked about you dabbling in, music composition and creation. Do you have any other, aspirations, goals that we could look forward to seeing from you?
I mean, my YouTube channel on the side, which is
Yeah.
very much on the side right now because the education program is taxing. But
Mhm.
I would love to, make a band, maybe go out,
Mhm.
even if it's like a small local thing. Go out, tour a bit, write some songs. I think the cruelly ironic part about music education is the more you become, the deeper you go into teaching music, the less time you actually have yourself to be a
Mhm.
musician. Because at
Yeah.
that point, it becomes less about developing yourself and more about developing others. And
Mhm.
so I would love to just be able to, further my own musical aptitude, write some songs, get together with people, like-minded people, and just go out, have fun for a few years. Then, when I get old and rattled down, settle down to a teaching job, you know, coast,
Mhm.
well, not coast, but, share my experiences, That's
Mhm.
that's the kind that's the musician's dream, so to speak. Whether it'll come true is dependent on a number of factors, but we'll see.
Yeah. So, we talked about, your goals outside and, being this musician and, being a teacher. How would you like your legacy to be remembered, both as a person as well as a professional, a musician, an artist, all these things? Like, what would you like to be remembered for?
Um, that's honestly a very, very good question.
Yeah.
If I were to talk about my legacy, I think I've said this to myself a lot, but I think it still holds true. I think if I can get, one kid to maybe s- put down the microscope, so to speak, you know, take a chance, take a leap of faith and jump into an art field, whether it be music, whether it be visual arts, drama, whatever say ye, then I think I will have made my mark on this world.
Mhm.
And I think no matter what, I think the biggest thing I want to do is be a good influence on someone,
Mhm.
and that I was able to be unapologetically me.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
that's probably.
absolutely love that. Being on a podcast, I think have a great message to tell everyone, and I'm hoping people can take that and go ahead and listen to this because yeah, I do feel like there is a stigma, especially at PET specifically. I feel like our band program is super strong, and but still a lot of people feel like they have to go into STEM. When I do know that there's a ton of good artists that we have at PET, there's a lot of extremely skilled people, and we have the teachers like you mentioned to support that. Wrapping up, bringing it back to PET, do you have any fellow graduates that you would like to nominate to be on this podcast?
Uh, I wouldn't say one person specifically, but I would say, if you have something to share, I think, even though at this one we probably had a lot of people on the podcast, but I would say every person has their own individual story to tell, and I think every person deserves a platform to tell that story. And I think, to be honest, I did contemplate kind of reaching out for this a couple times, but I think at the end of the day, everyone has a story to tell. And I think
Mhm.
you would do the world a good service by telling it, and you can get a lot of insight from the same story told from your point of view. So
Mhm.
I would say if you want, I would encourage you to go for it. I think
Yeah.
every graduate deserves
Mhm.
a chance to speak and about themselves and
Mhm.
brag and gloat for like half an
Yeah.
hour.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better myself. Do you have any, closing remarks, words of wisdom? You've been, just spitting, absolutely amazing,
Spitting wisdom.
spitting
Thank
wisdom
you.
out here. Do you have any last piece of advice, wisdom, inspiration for us?
I mean, I guess just to reiterate, do what you love. Don't let anyone try and steer you off the path that you want to walk. I'd say if you have a if if you see yourself in a certain position in 5 years, I'd say you can do it as long as you keep working at it and don't let anyone tell you you can't.
Mhm. Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Like you said, if you want to be on the podcast and share your story, which we both think is really important, please let us know. And thank you everyone so much for watching. We'll see everyone next week. So.